It's always a great opportunity when county educators get together to kind of compare notes on what's going on in their county. And Josh, what are you hearing from county educators across the state when it comes to crops?
Well, what we're talking about right now is things we don't have, and there's three in particular. We don't have a whole lot of moisture, we don't have a whole lot of heat, and we don't have a whole lot of money. And those three aspects, or the lack of those three, are kind of what's driving a lot of our crop decisions around the state right now.
How does that differ from last year at this time? It seemed like we were in not a totally different situation, but things were a little bit better.
Yeah, so last year when we take a retrospective look back, we had a lot of moisture and we were building moisture all winter long. We had some good snows, we had some good rain, so we were building up that soil moisture, which ended up causing us some issues when we continued to build that soil moisture on into the spring. We're not exactly on the complete opposite situation. We still have some soil moisture present. There are still folks out there with moisture. Those are the folks maybe without the heat. Right. But right now, those folks that have missed those rains, we're specifically talking about mainly those folks in the southeast or the southwest districts on the Panhandle. They really haven't received a whole lot of rain since we took our summer crops out. And so those folks are working on a moisture deficit. Some of the other folks got a lot of moisture, have a lot of good growing conditions, but we don't have the heat. And then once again, we get asked a lot of, our educators are getting asked a lot, when we don't have a whole lot of movable or liquid funds, what are we going to end up doing? And that is the big question that we have right now.
When would be that the decision deadline? I don't want to use that term, but when should producers really put pen to paper and say, we need to do something with our crop?
Well, it's never a bad time to be doing a little bit of napkin math.
Right.
That should be always on our producer's mind, and it always is. We're going to start forming what probably is the best situation to go in when we start getting into February. That's traditionally when we get a lot of our big snowstorms, right, a lot of our big moisture into the winter. Right. So that's a big decision. We're also very warm in some parts. It's not overly warm, but we haven't been traditionally winter cold yet. So if we continue a warming trend on into the spring, we'll start to see some of those winter crops grow and start coming out of dormancy potentially around that February. So that end of February on into the 1st of March is going to be a big period where we're going to see a lot of potentially what we need to be doing start forming.
What would be some options for producers to hold their soil together in February if we don't get the rains that we need, but they still want to put something out there just to keep it from blowing away?
Yeah, that's always a good thing. I mean, we all know in Oklahoma that keeping the ground in place is probably needs to be priority number one. Right. And so we get a lot of folks around that mid-February that'll go to those spring oats, maybe even a spring rye. We've heard some talk of spring wheat. Oats, I think, are the more popular. We get that big flush of growth. So if you do have cattle out there, that we do get a really nice spring forage right, going into our summer pastures. I mean, that's a really nice option. If we have maybe either a small grain or a forage out there right now, maybe we don't want to run the dice this year on a summer crop. We always have good options with our millets and our forage sorghum. Teff has always been a real popular one in recent years, and a lot of our cover crop species. Once again, holding that ground in place, kind of resetting the clock. Keeping something for those cattle to graze, and maybe keeping some funds liquid for your system. Right. That way we can kind of reset the clock potentially and hopefully and kind of move forward. The other thing is it's not a bad time, hopefully with some movement we have with the trade talks, to go in and get that. We've seen some very positive things, so we're seeing promise once again for our summer grains and our oil seeds. So soybeans are always looking promising, corn's always a good promising, sorghum's looking better and better every day, and cotton has been a very a favorite in recent years. But the big thing that I want growers to consider this year is maybe looking at some of those acres that they've been able to clean up over the last couple of years to look at sesame, because that's also a very nice option if you are looking to put a seed in the ground for grain production in the summer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Josh Lofton, Cropping Systems Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.